meeting to order. The special meeting to order. Excuse me, the time is now 3:39. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the flag of the United States. He is the perfect nation, harmony and justice.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is roll call. Roll call, please.
Board Member Dennis Romero. Board Member Mrs. Elaine Martinez Gonzalez. Board Secretary Dr. Joyce Mazur. Present. Board Vice President Dr. Kimberly Blair. Board President Paul Present.
Present. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Dr. Blair. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Dr. Mazur. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is our work session. Ms. Honey.
Mr. Chair, members, I pass it on to Mr. David Chavez to facilitate.
President Gonzalez, members of the board, Superintendent Sandoval, thank you for allowing us to be here again. The last session, I believe, I was not here. I had another commitment. But Ms. Montoya Cordova and Teresa Salazar out of our office worked with you on, I think what they did is went over the process of developing goals and the process of developing guardrails. And I believe that meeting was left with Superintendent Sandoval indicating that she and her staff could put some goals and guardrails together for consideration here today. So if I could default to Superintendent Sandoval, you have the handout. That this is really a draft form. So this has the work that was done by Superintendent Sandoval and her team. It also has the work that we did at the very first meeting that we had. It has your vision, your mission, and your core values. So those have not changed. They continue to be what is developed. What has been not changed but included are the goals that were developed by Superintendent Sandoval and her leadership team.
So I think really what this is just a summary of, and I do want to acknowledge Ms. Vanessa Garcia for putting the bulk of the effort into this, but it is a culmination of all of the discussion and the work that we have had over the last two meetings. And what we looked at also was, is it work that's already applicable to what we have started and are doing? And I think that it's work that we can easily continue with and embark on it and have, some real structure.
So what I've done is I've taken the work that was provided by Superintendent Sandoval, and if you read that first goal, it has three different components to that first goal. It has literacy, it has mathematics, and it also has CTE. A recommendation I would make is that you look at, if you look up on the screen, what I've done is I've taken that first goal and made it into three separate goals so that you're not overwhelmed by trying to track key performance indicators to the three different areas. You're still doing that, but you're doing that as singular goals as opposed to all of them in one area. We did not change the context of the goal. I'll shoulder the blame here. What I did is I took the literacy goal and kept the percentage proficient at 20%, with 2026 being your baseline year. And that 20% would be what was accomplished by the year 2029. So you would incrementally get to that 20% over the next 2 years. What this allows you to do is track each goal through the key performance indicators separately. I've done the same thing with the mathematics goal. Is kept at 20%. Maybe that was the intent. Using 2026 baseline data to determine where you're at as a district. And then showing 20% gains between 26, 27 through 28, 29. And this would be on the, whatever the state assessment is at the time. I know we're currently using the MASA. Hopefully our state will continue to use that same measure. But I put it in terms of whatever, in comparison to whatever the state assessment is. The problem in our state, anytime you change the assessment, then you change your baseline. So all of that information changes. And then on the CTE, you have a rather robust CTE program already in the district. So it's taking the pathways that you currently have, making sure that they are aligned to career clusters and national pathways or national programs of study. And then if the desire is to continue to increase the number of programs of study that you would put in place in the district, it would allow you to do so between 2026 and 2029. The key performance indicators and the strategies that are listed within the work that Superintendent Sandoval and her staff have done, I think that can continue on by transferring that information over to the template that you have. So I'll just stand for any questions at this point. You have 2 other goals that are, and they're goals 2 and 3 in the written plan. In my discussions with Ms. Montoya Cordova, it is our opinion that you could continue with those, but put them in the form of guardrails rather than as goals. Because you do have some guardrails that are very similar to the goal that you've stated. I think by simply adding to the current guardrail that you have, you could incorporate what your intentions are with the goal. So it's not doing away with those 2, it's simply shifting them from a goal to a guardrail. And Ms. Montoya Cordova can speak more to that when we get to that part of the presentation. So I guess at this point, I believe the staff developed the goals. This may be the first time that you're seeing these. And I don't know, I'm just making an assumption here and that's not good.
I do want to remind you all too that when we were talking about the distinction between goals and guardrails, remember the goals were stated with that question, what students know and are able to do. So goals tend to be those things that are associated with the outcomes for students, right? What they know and are able to do. So in reading, their literacy goes up, in math, their scores, whatever there. And the guardrails tend to be those things that are protecting key practices, the key culture, key requirements, so that in pursuit of your goals, you're not giving those up. And I know we had a really robust conversation about all the values that were laden in your community assessment. And I know that student wellness is really important. That should come through. Student wellness should be protected as you're pursuing literacy, as you're pursuing math, and as you're pursuing career readiness or career technical readiness. And for the board, the way, and for the superintendent, the way that comes through is through progress monitoring, you will start to hear, while we were doing professional development, or one of the things that we noticed in student wellness that really helped to support this work around literacy or math was whether you're doing social and emotional wellness, but that was also part of the process that's contributing to the success of that particular goal. They're harder to measure, but they're very important inputs in terms of that process. The student outcomes are based on all those inputs that you're going to have in curriculum, training, wellness programs, safety, good facilities. All of those inputs are important to the overarching goal of student outcomes.
So I guess what the decision a decision point for the board would be, by the way that the goals are stated and presented, what you would like to see, because at the end of the day, the board owns the goals of the district, but the leadership team will then be putting in place the action plan strategies, key measures that are going to be used to assess the action plans, and then a timeline. So the leadership team has put some of that in place already in the plan that you have before you. I guess the decision point of the board are the 3 goals that are being proposed. Actually, there's more than that if you go by what was submitted and written and ready to do.
So I believe upon reviewing these are certainly kind of, they did come together a lot of the conversation we had. So I do believe it touches on, between the 3 goals, every major aspect of our school district. And I believe that, especially if our team came up with these and narrowed these down, that we would want to respect the work they've done and work with them, because like you said, they're the ones that are going to be putting these goals into place. So me personally, I feel comfortable with these 3 goals. I'm not sure if there's anything Dr. Mazur or Dr. Ray would like to look at or tweak, but again, as long as these are all measurable, which they look like they are, right? We want to make sure that we can continue to properly monitor these goals, of course. So.
I know, but what I do want is the staff that is here, because they were part of the development of all of this, or at least primarily part of that first pieces. I want to make sure that, because they're the ones that are the boots on the ground that help execute all of this. So if they have any comments or feedback to you all, I think that's important.
I will make a comment or some remarks. Just want to thank you all for the work, because I know whenever we had the previous planning sessions, we had lots of ideas and we were coming at it from all the different perspectives and all of our different experiences and what we thought. And I understand like the process and synthesizing when you have the, community input sessions and then breaking it down. I feel really good about it. I can see how this is actually the intent of what we discussed. I just would appreciate confirmation, Superintendent Sandoval, that you have confidence in the ability to implement the strategic plan and measure it, because it is ambitious with 3 of the goals. Which of course, I also understand that we have the opportunity to perhaps, take the strategic goal 1 and make that really the strategic plan, then use goal 2 and 3 as the guardrails. So I would like some input from you all and the team as to what is realistic. Because I will just say this, we want a strategic plan that is going to be implemented and not just sit on the shelf and look pretty. Or at least that's what I want.
So with regards to drafting the 3 goals, and staff, please speak up, because you guys are a big part of executing this. My preference, and I like the goals the way they sit, and I think that's stuff that we have to do anyway. But I am in agreement with you that perhaps goal number 1 is that overarching piece, and then the guardrails would be 2 and 3. Because those are pieces that we work along, within the systemic work anyway, and I think you guys have seen that we have done so. But ultimately, the change and the drive is the adult behaviors that impact student achievement. And I think that really ties back into goal number 1.
So if you don't mind, I did a bulk of the work. We are, in looking at this, a lot of what is on there is what we, in our tenure here, have started. And these are all things that should, and if I'm saying this wrong, automatically be done regardless. This is stuff that should be in our everyday teaching, especially when we're looking at goal 1 with reading, math, and science. And even if it's 3 separate goals, the overall goal is we need to increase academic proficiency. We've seen that in PAC meetings, presentations, everywhere that we've gotten at, our proficiency levels aren't where they're at. So whether it's 1 goal or 3 goals, regardless what subject it is, it should actually be 10 goals, and we have 10 different subjects. We should be proficient in every single one of those. So as a combination, and again, mind you, this is over 5 years, 6, 7, 8, 3 years. This is feasible within 3 years, small gains program. Because we have already started, and anybody else can speak of, laying the foundation with working on the layers. We've got teachers wanting to get trained. We're looking at the summer aligning curriculum vertically, horizontally. We're creating new lesson plan templates. We have all of the steps within goal 1. So I do agree goal 1 is probably the most important. However, when you go back and look at all of when we had our last plan with the community, goal 2 and goal 3 were very high on the list of our campus. If our kids don't want to be here, if our kids don't have the social emotional learning, not necessarily learning, but social emotional support and the culture to be in school, nothing we do in the academics. I mean, you can't teach them if they're not here. So we're going to build that culture, make this a place where kids want to become every day, then the academics should naturally fall into place with what we're already. And of course, I know we have noted also in a lot of the things is just the overall buildings. It's hard to teach a class when your classroom is 80 degrees. Nobody's going to learn anything, So I think goal 2 and 3 do support goal 1, but if we go back and we listen and look at all the feedback that comes from staff and parents, kind of all 3 are just as important. But that's just kind of, we've already laid the foundation, and superintendent have always laid the foundation of all the projects, the new schooling going in, and things like that. So, and again, it is over 3 years. That's just kind of my info on what I did go back and look at all of the votes and what people said, what I've seen in my PAC meetings, just the conversations we've held. These are things that the district should automatically be doing, but we need to get improve on. Okay.
Thanks for clarifying that too, because I think what I hear from both Superintendent Sandoval and from this Assistant Superintendent is that the guardrails are really important, right? It's really important to make sure that we have student wellness and all those, and what hopefully I didn't create some confusion, but guardrails are just as important as goals. They're really important and they should be measured as well. And so even though they're stated as guardrails, doesn't make them less important, okay? The first goal, and I think let's be a little forward thinking, okay? So progress monitoring is now coming to the board, and we're going to progress monitor the goal, the first goal. Is the intention then to present to the board a presentation on literacy, presentation on math, and a presentation on CTE all at once at each interim, or are you going to do just literacy, then just math, then just CTE? That's an option to do it like that as well. And you could all along be monitoring the guardrails as well, because you could also come in and say, this particular monitoring session is going to be solely on our guardrail, because you've got measures on this one on student wellness and well-being, right? And so those could come in and say, because you have a goal, you have a measure of improving it by, really quick, of a 25% increase in positive. So when you bring that before the board, that could be a progress monitoring session in and of itself, right? We're just talking about that guardrail and everything that went into that. So I just want to clarify that, because I think the board needs to, you need to understand, like, do you want all of those being monitored all at the same time, one time, and you're taking in all of the data for literacy, all of the data for math, all of the data for CTE, all in one session each time that you're going to monitor them? Or do you want to monitor them individually? Because that makes a difference too, and superintendent and staff, that makes a difference for you too, in terms of the level of preparedness, right, to come to prepare a progress monitoring report. So if you're just preparing a progress monitoring report, let's say we create the calendar, because that's part of it, and January is going to be literacy, and February is going to be math, and March is going to be CTE, and April is going to be guardrails, and then again, May is going to be literacy again, then it's going to be math. Is that something that's doable for you, or is there a preference to just do, you know, what's your planning or thinking about that as you're looking forward? Because it's important to think about that part.
So my experience with this, with regards to the progress monitoring and reporting, is we actually track it through our already established windows, right? So we're doing it actually not quarterly, but we're doing it 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
And we present to the board. We don't get into the weeds. You know, that the weeds is our work, the classroom, the school, or grade levels. But what we look at with regards to presentation to the board is as a school, or as and I think what it does is it protects also the staff members. So for example, if we say that we have very low functioning 4th grade class, and we're a small enough district that it points individuals, or could pinpoint individuals, you know, we also want to support within the culture that there's growth and not a radar on certain areas. So to me, and looking at this now is not so much quarterly reporting, but, you know, triennial. So beginning, middle, end, and it would be math and reading only. Okay. Because when we're looking at career technical education, you're looking at programming, not so much skills, right? We're not looking at specific areas. So what can be tracked perhaps is number of students enrolled in particular pathways or programming. Number, you know, when we're looking at Perkins and Next Gen funding, you're looking at concentrators and completers, how many have gone through those pathways versus, I guess I wouldn't see a particular triennial report to give to the board
On the CTE.
On the CTE,
okay.
Right, so I think the way it's written here is, you know, that we're going to be providing diverse elective options. So, you know, it's, where did we start? What are we offering now? How many courses have we expanded to? So to me, that's more, that would be the date I would present to the board.
And that would be separate, you're saying?
That would be separate.
And it might not be at the same time, exact reading and math. So thank you for clarifying that, because that might also help you break it out. So first goal would be reading and math, and then the second one would be the CTE.
And then within that, as part of the plan, we as a team, the CLSD, in PLCs, we are looking at the data, we're analyzing the data, we're creating the goals, we're looking at how we adjust our layers to make sure that we reach that 20%. So that work is done by the people who are directly oversight of the students, so that we can get that specific feedback. We're all, and reading, math, science, it all goes hand in hand. So those are done in grade level PLCs.
PLCs, and we are looking at an integration block.
So Superintendent, what you just said in terms of breaking those two out totally aligns with what I've seen with other districts. They're, especially the smaller districts, they're doing that BOY, LOY for reading and math together. And then they're breaking out the high school stuff, the CTE, as a completely separate report and at a different time. So that totally aligns if that's how your data is collected and it works. I think for us, when we saw it all lumped together, it was like, wow, how would it be able to be reported, right? Because it might not be at the same timing. So, because the next step, obviously, once you have these, is to develop that calendar and have it as a regular calendar date of when it's going to occur, like when is it going to be beginning of the year, when is it going to be middle of the year, because that also helps you all for planning, right? And it also sends the message out to the rest of the staff, that's the expectation, but then it also helps you as a board, because you know our agenda is going to have to include a progress monitoring report on this particular month or this time, and it's going to be on this particular piece. So it helps the board members also be prepared, right? So they're not kind of shifting gears on you, but saying, no, because board president Gonzalez will say, no, we're talking about math today. We're not talking about reading. Or we're talking about reading and math, we're not talking about CTE. But it really does help structure your governance time and helps you to become efficient with that. But thank you, Superintendent Sandoval, for breaking that out and saying that, because I think that would probably be a really good shift. So essentially what you're saying is goal 1 is reading and math, goal 2 is CTE. Oh, guardrails is next. Okay, so let's talk about guardrails.
Make your one move on to guardrails. So then are we looking at just 2 goals? Are we looking at maintaining goal 2 as 3?
So, and we can talk about that in the context of what you guys have written and how you've called them goals. That's okay. Okay? So, I remember when I was being trained on this, and as a board member, thinking, I kind of felt like, goals are important, like goals. We talk about language goals, and language matters, right, in terms of how we label things. But what I came away with after we started the progress monitoring is I came away understanding that guardrails are just as important. And it doesn't mean that because it's not labeled goal, that it's not important. It's an important guardrail. And what I love that you guys have done is that you lifted up a really important guardrail around school culture, student and staff well-being, because I think that your community assessment was filled with that, right? And so you listed that as a really top priority guardrail. You've got, on the other page, you have the guardrails listed in terms of like what the superintendent shall not do, right? So, and you have staff and student well-being, and the superintendent shall not neglect the physical or emotional safety and health of students. And in this particular goal, the way you have it written, that by the end of this, that's how you're planning to measure that. So it becomes your measure in terms of what you're going to be looking for in increases. Now, what I will say about guardrails, it's important to just set your measure on your guardrails for like each year, because you might change your interim measure, if you've already met it, right, you might shift it out so that you look at the way that your guardrail is listed. There might be other things that will rise to the top, right? So maybe for the first year, your guardrail is that you have here, and that is your measure for your first year. And that's what the superintendent would report back to the board, and board, that's what you would hold your superintendent accountable for. So I think it's more of, is there agreement that that's a strong enough interim measure, right? So for the first year, if the measure is the district will establish a safe and supportive school culture by achieving a 25% increase in positive school climate ratings and a 90% staff retention rate. The way that it's stated here, the way that you would report that is you're only going to report that like probably once a year because you don't have interims and stuff. So at the end of the year, you get to say how close we were to that. We either have exceeded it or you could change what your interim is going to be.
So would your suggestion then be, okay, for year one, we're looking at the guardrail, at the end of the school year, which would be essentially right around now, okay, this is our guardrail, we didn't do very well, let's continue it into the 26, 27, or you know what, we met that 90%, now we can just create a new, kind of like a running.
You're right on target. Yeah, you're right on target. And that's why guardrails are only monitored generally like once a year. It's kind of like a check-in on your values because they're usually mostly culture laden. They're really around the things that are important. They're important inputs and they're important outputs that you want in terms of from adults and around the students and things that we want to shift around the culture. But it's not necessary that you're going to be like doing iReady. I mean, you don't get to check mark that. You're not. It's not like you know, when you go to the grocery store, you order something online, they always send you like a customer service or satisfaction survey. You're not doing that kind of stuff. You're trying to pick and choose when you're going to do those things. But you're absolutely correct, Cynthia, that you would try to figure out the best way to measure that. And so you could put that, you could still keep this school culture and student staff well-being as your guardrail number 1. And then guardrail number 2 that you would have would be school environment, infrastructure, and facilities.
Okay.
You see?
It just fell in place, yes. Say that again?
So that your guardrail number 2, so the way I'm listening to it, goal number 1 is reading and math. Goal number 2 is the CTE post-secondary. Guardrail number 1 is students, staff and student well-being. And guardrail number 2 is social environment, infrastructure, and facilities. Now, all these other areas that you've listed as potential guardrails around integrity and ethical accountability, these are still important. So you could still name those as guardrails. So you could have the 2 goals and you could have 4 guardrails, but you're just going to have measures for each year on those in terms of what you're going to report. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does now.
Yeah, okay. Because you guys did a lot of hard work. I remember when we were here, the associate did a good job of AIing it and making your buckets. So they're all there. So I think it just really puts it all together, and your strategic plan, your KPIs, you know, what you're going to do for year 1 will look very different from what you're going to do for year 2. And that's where the superintendent staff will bring that to you, board members. So you're just looking for the first year. What are we doing the first year? And your progress monitoring is just, are we on track to meet what we said we were going to meet by the end of the 3 years? Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay, you guys, I mean, it's all here. Okay. Did we do that too fast?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
No.
I'm good.
Makes sense, no.
So, I mean, so is there, I guess because you've got a measure for the first 2 guardrails, I mean, it's just a matter of coming up with what your interim measure is going to be for the guardrail around community and parent partnerships, and integrity and ethical accountability. What are you going to measure in your one? Like, how are you going to know that you've protected that guardrail? And it sounds like your associate's really good at helping you to define those.
Right, and one of the things just for you board members is what we've identified is that we don't have a lot of parent participation in academic dynamics, right? There are more celebratory things or competitions, and one of the things that Ms. Garcia, Dr. Reddy, and the team have done, Ms. Martinez, is they've gone around and attempted to, well, not attempted, they have hosted parent advisory meetings, and not too many have shown up. So we know that that's a deficit, and that where parent engagement is not just communicating information out through, like Class Dojo, for example, or putting something on a marquee, but really engaging them in the conversation. So those would be definitely measurable things with number of attendance to maybe a little bit more at the end of the year, and that is what the staff is doing currently. So I think it behooves us to engage, the community.
And where you also will hear that, so let's say, for example, you're doing the progress monitoring report on the reading and math, right? Progress monitoring is about, here's the data, here's what it's showing us. But there's also a story too. You get to tell the story about what were some of the inputs that we had during this time period. And if community engagement was one of those, you want to tell that story in there about how it may have helped at the elementary level around engaging parents to understand more about the board's goals around reading and math and why this is important and why we're engaging and what you're noticing about the parents' engagement and how it's increasing or that participation in helping to move the goal.
Do you have some type of progress monitoring template from previous or other constituents that you would mind sharing so that we can kind of see
Yes.
when we make the connect how it's
Sure.
supposed to?
I sent in the last communication I had with President Gonzalez and Superintendent, I sent sample progress monitoring reports. And then there's also in there, and they can share those links with you, but there's also links in there around other boards that you can watch so you can see how they presented it. So that's also available to you. It doesn't need to be really hard. What I will send, and I think I even have it here, we can get a copy before I go, a template that just says what should be the content of it, and then you structure it however is important to you. But there's like really key questions that it should actually have current data, should have like maybe some sort of trend, like, how does this compare to like maybe last year as we're moving, and here's our goal, are we trending upward? It kind of shows a trend line where we're going. Usually includes some sort of statement that it's on track or it's not on track, and then there's usually a description of what were some of the activities that we put into this process with this monitoring period. What were some of those strategies, those KPIs? Did we finish professional development? What was the attendance? Just all of those things. And then there should be a section around what were some of the challenges, things that we're still noticing that we still have to work on. It's not, there are still some challenges ahead for us. And then the last part's what's our action steps? What are we going to do next? What are we going to do differently? And so for you, board, it gives you an idea of understanding what went in, what were some of the inputs that were there, what were some of the outputs. And when I think of outputs, we think of like how many parents attended to how many teachers participated in that. They're not outcomes, it's outputs as a result of your inputs, but your inputs are everything that you pay for with your budget. And so it'll help you to start to see how budget is being utilized. And then at the end with the action strategies, can give you an opportunity to ask the superintendent, is this going to be a shift in resources for us? Do we need to think differently? What does this mean for our budget? Kind of stuff like that.
Well, Mike's got a couple other items.
the parent involvement, I know that was also something that came up in the community needs assessment. I would see that as being a strategy, either within the MAC or literacy, because you're going to have parent involvement to get to where you want to be. So it's a strategy, and that's a way you can track it administratively. So that you do have activities associated in getting the parents there for those activities. The other is, remember that this is a 3-year plan, so you don't want to overload yourselves in year 1 with a lot of responsibility that you're having to track. So you may want to do the 2 goals, and you may want to strongly consider the 2 guardrails. And then if you feel like in year 2, you want to bring up additional guardrails, or you've systemically addressed the guardrails that you put in place, and you know those are going to continue, you then look at what are the guardrails that we need to put in place to begin addressing over the next 3 years, some of those areas that came out in that community needs assessment. The other piece is, and this is not part of the agenda, I'm just going to add it, and you can say enough. When I was a superintendent, I had a 42-item checklist for my evaluation. I was not very good at all 42 of those, nor did it provide meaningful information to the board, I don't think, in terms of attitudes and attributes. The schools that we had in a 6-year study, about 4 or 5 of them have developed superintendent evaluations tied back to the strategic plan. So they've incorporated the goals that you're addressing here as part of that evaluation design. So you'll have the action plans, and you'll have objective data by which to evaluate the superintendent. And I think the superintendent would appreciate that, because then the person knows, okay, these are my targets. If I complete these targets, then I'm in line with what the board has expectations of me. We have some of those evaluation documents that you could, if you desire to, take a look at and adopt something similar for your district. That's just an additional thing that we can provide you if you wish to go there.
I did have in my magic book, I did have the document. It has a whole section there, effective progress monitoring report, what the topics are that it includes. But additionally, there are samples.
And she has it.
I sent it over. I can resend it.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah, and if you don't, I will resend it. I can resend another one where it's just progress monitoring reports. Or I can get your email address if you want to send it to you, so that way we can make sure that you get them. But there's so many. The cool part about it right now is because CES has been doing this work for a while. There are so many examples out there because we've got school boards. We've got several school boards doing this process now. So you guys are coming on at a great time, because what I've learned about education, it's a lot of like, what are you doing? Yes, we're going to do that. There's no need to create something, but you should customize it to what makes sense for you all. And board members, when you get your first progress monitoring report, it will seem overwhelming at first, but there will be a rhythm, and hopefully what you can do, like Ruidoso did, their first few progress monitoring reports, they kind of slogged through them, and then they had a real honest conversation at the end of the year and said, what worked and what didn't? What do we need to do differently? Maybe we can kind of think that through. And they've become so effective at that communication back and forth that their progress monitoring has become really spot on.
May I ask a question? With regards to the progress monitoring and presentation to the board, I should say. Does this occur during a regular school board meeting, or is it a work session? So we're creating a more concise report for the board, to be, one, transparent, but to be efficient and not labor of a meeting to be 4 hours long because we have so much data.
That's an excellent question. So what I've seen is a little bit of both. So what I have seen is some of our smaller districts, like I know, for example, I would just pull out for sure Aztec. They do a working session before the regular meeting, and it's just on their progress report. And that's the opportunity, they've got a whole hour, and they're asking questions, they can work through the data, they can do stuff. And then in their regular meeting, it's still on their agenda as the superintendent's report, because at that point, the superintendent, because the community also is invested with you in this. So what I will say is put it on your regular agenda, say we did have a working session, we presented the data. It's kind of a recap. We said, we were on time, we're on track with stuff, and the board adopts the report. They just say, we accept the report, and that's it. Or if there was something that was found out in the work session that still needs to be tweaked, the superintendent says that during that work session, we're going to be coming back to the board with a tweak or whatever. So I've seen them do it that way. APS does it completely different, so does Socorro. Socorro just does it as a presentation, it's that night, and it's on their agenda, and they just work it out at that time. They've also become so streamlined, and President Gonzalez and I talked a little bit about that. There's ways to also make your board meetings more efficient and effective around some ways, and hopefully that's also something that you're interested in doing. I know for APS we used to have marathon meetings. They used to go at least 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours. They were ridiculous. But we streamlined our task because we were so committed as a board to becoming effective and efficient, because we knew staff was sitting in the room, and every hour we kept them in there was just, we're wasting them away as well. So we wanted to be effective and efficient. So we cut, our goal as a board was to have a meeting that went no longer than 3 hours. And we did it. So, and they also cut down the number of meetings. Because when I started, we used to have 4 meetings a week. I know, look at Dr. Bray, I'm serious. 4 meetings a week as a working person was undoable. I was all over the place. But now they're down to, I think they have 2 regular board meetings a month, because they just have so much, and then finance, and that's it. So they have 3 meetings a month. It's awesome. For a big district that big, that's amazing. But I've seen them do the workshop as well, and so I can send you the link to Aztec, and you can watch how they workshop it. That seems to me like a really good process, especially when you have new board members, because it's a good time to get caught up and everything's going. Now you might get better at it as you're in like year 2. You might not need that workshop. Okay? Where are we? What's our next step? Dave.
Let me talk about next steps. It appears that your admin team, and it appears that the board is okay with the way the goals were presented here this afternoon. So it may be a matter of having to go back, tweak, and refine, but I believe you're already in a good way with your strategic plan. You have your goals. The one area, I think you have 2 guardrails, possibly 4, that you're going to be incorporating. I would strongly suggest that less is always more. So the possibility of looking at those 2 guardrails, if you looked at here this afternoon, and if you feel strongly about bringing in another guardrail, I would do no more than 3, because that burden is going to shift to the superintendent and her staff to track and report on it. And then once that gets done, Yolanda will be working with you as a board for the next 6 months. And she'll work with you, President Gonzalez, on setting up. Are you going to have a one-day session with him? Or?
No, we probably will just, once we get to the first progress monitoring report, I will help, I can review the progress monitoring report before, so that we can just kind of see where we are. I'll work with President Gonzalez to just set that up, and then I will be live during the first session when you're progress monitoring. And being on live, either I come or I can do it virtually. I You can just kind of listen and I can be available for questions as you're going. There's going to be some documents that I'll send to the board members that you'll have to read, especially in that book, Great on Their Behalf. You guys all have it, right? There will be like a specific chapter that I'm going to have you reference around progress monitoring. But let's move back just a step. So once you've settled, you're going to rewrite how your goals are going to be stated and how the guardrails are going to be stated. That needs to come before the board in a regular session, and the board adopts them. It has to be an action item. And the reason for that is because that is the major role and responsibility of the board, is to set the direction for the district. And that's your proof that you did it. So adopt those goals and adopt those guardrails. And then we have to develop the calendar. That's usually done by the staff. They will say when we're going to present, what is going to be the dates that they're going to present. And then President Gonzalez will work with that calendar so you know how to calendar it for your agenda. So you'll know when progress monitoring is going to happen on your agenda.
So, President Gonzalez, members of the board, Superintendent Sandoval, you heard a lot of support for the board. There's support for you here as well. Because I know progress monitoring in the way that Ms. Yolanda Montoya Cordova explained it may be different than the way you are currently doing that. So if you want, we can do a session with you on how you would prepare that progress monitoring report, and then how that would then be delivered, if you would like that kind of assistance. I want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you. Once you get that and it's presented to the board, if you can have a copy for our files, it would help us in terms of the work that Ms. Montoya Cordova will be doing with the board. And we'll be with you through the next 6 months. So thank you for this opportunity.
Maybe do have a question before we move forward. So with regards to my presentation to the board, we were bringing goal 1, 2, and guardrails 1, 2, maybe 3. Are we bringing a document such as this, or are we is it more, I don't want to say narrative type, but
That is totally up to you. What should just be really clear in the minutes is that they adopted how the goal is stated, but how you present it is up to you. You could either have it as a document, you could just even have it just as written document, and it's in part of the packet, and they see what's going to be presented. And it's usually the superintendent. You can just say, recommend the board, after all the work we've done, recommend adoption of the following goals and guidelines. But yeah, you can be fluffy, or you can just be straightforward. I've seen it all over the place.
And this is, I think, an ask for my team and something that I would like the board to consider with regards to goals. I'm not letting you guys go just yet. One of the things that I feel is important with regards to expansion of career and technical education is that it's not only a secondary activity. So one of the things that I'd like to do is within that 3-year period, that goal would be to expand. We've already offered exploratory, or will be offering, have been offering career exploration courses at the middle school. But to make that more of a K-12 approach first, whether it's presentations and exposure, I think it's important to be more strategic about what we're providing to the schools. One of the things that we incorporated, and I think the staff a couple of years ago here utilized AVID, which is a college and career exploration program. So things like that we can add in, I think is important. So I just want to let you know that I'm going to go in and broaden goal number 2 a little bit from career technical education.
I do have a really excellent progress monitoring report on that career technical ed side that Socorro's been doing. And you can see they have, it started out more baselining because their plan was to also grow, but and a small district like yours, they're trying not to get into like identifying students because we know that, we can't do that part. But really looking at like completers of certain things and how often that was happening. But I can send you that progress monitoring report too, so you can see how they just looked at different kinds of data to prove the kind of work. And I think before I go, one thing that I will say too, it's really, really important, and this is for you board members, to get ready to understand the difference between inputs, outputs, and outcomes, okay? So the inputs are all the things that go into creating the conditions for success, right? So it's like professional development, curriculum, school buildings, buses, good routes, school nursing, you know, all of the things that are good inputs to have. And the outputs are really a lot of the things you can have. So you can have a lot of adult inputs, so things that you invest in with the adults. And you can have a lot of inputs that are invested into the students. The outputs are also the same. You can have good outputs from adults, and those are the adults that are attending, that are taking advantage of the professional development just their, you know, the fidelity of the classroom stuff that they're doing through walkthroughs. They're noticing that they're implementing the curriculum fidelity. Those are all outputs. And student outputs are also important because outputs from students would be like, they're coming to school, right? They have started attending. You know, there's more engagement. You see things differently. The outcomes are really just those final scores. Did it make a difference to improving the reading score or proficiency or whatever it is that you're measuring, that it's actually that indicator. That's the outcome. So it's really important, and you'll start to see that in progress monitoring reports because they're going to tell you the story of everything that they put into that particular, if it's the beginning of the year or the middle of the year or the end of the year, what were the things that we put into making this happen? And I just gave everybody, there's a piece in it that says effective monitoring reports. And your reports are going to grow, because remember that this is a continuous improvement process. We're not going to be great at it initially, but you know, our students aren't great at everything initially either, right? They're in a continuous learning cycle as well, and so the board has to make a commitment. We're in a continuous learning improvement ourselves, and we've got to make this commitment to being curious, right? It's not about the gotcha, it's about being curious about why is this working so well, or why is this not working so well, but not with a hint of defensiveness about it, but just like, wow, what did we learn from that? You know, what could we do differently? And hopefully the superintendent is drilling her staff too when she gets the progress. It's like, wow, why did that work? What didn't work so well on this, and what do we know about it? And as I will promise you, if you make that commitment to just remain curious about what's happening, you will see progress. I was pleasantly surprised with APS because we were really intent on making progress, you know, for certain students, and we started to see progress. Is it completely resolved? No. But we can see that there's growth, and we can see that there's really hard work to it. And what I liked as a board member is when it came time to the legislative session, or if I was talking to a legislator, I could say, you know, we're working really hard because we have been progress monitoring, and I can tell you why we might be plateauing with a certain group, because we're starting to hear that. There are going to be kids that are going to take off, and you're going to see them take off, and you're still going to have students that maybe are in the gap. And that's where you need to have your questions be the hardest, right? Why are we still in the gap? And I know that that's what you all were interested in. So just hang in there and just be willing to be uncomfortable. Adult behavior change is hard. We don't like change.
So in the progress monitoring, we report on outputs and outcomes. The inputs, the outcomes.
The inputs,
The outputs and the outcomes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You try to, a progress monitoring story is really about all the inputs and outputs that
Just
you're
say that gives
seeing.
you a fuller picture rather than just the outcome.
Right, exactly. And it's just really knowing the distinction between those. And you as staff would be really helpful for the board to start to see those distinctions. And they'll become a lot better at knowing, oh, that's why we have that in the budget. You know, that's why we pay for this piece. And we can see how it's being utilized. And it starts to make sense. And it all the puzzle comes together a lot faster.
Any final questions or?
I do have one.
Okay.
So when we're looking at, and I would like to know what other districts are doing with regards to the data behind the increase. Are they looking, because I've seen it two different ways, I'd like to copy people with regards to what is maybe more is trending. Are we looking at short cycle assessments as the baseline? And I understand, you know, beginning, middle, end of year, and you can see that growth over time? Or should we be measuring, in our case, this 20% increase in 3 years based off of the NAMASA data? What is it that you guys are recommending in that regard?
I would lend more credence on your short cycle assessment, because if you wait till the end of the year, that's probably too late to make adjustments. You're probably making adjustments from the very time that you get results on your short cycle to the next cycle. So I would rely more heavily on a short cycle assessment. If you take care of that, the assessment is going to take care of itself.
Do we have districts that do progress monitoring on the curriculum-based assessments, the teacher assessments in the classroom? Is there any opening for monitoring to have that data?
The
teacher-based assessments, so whatever's going on in the classroom, their formatives. Do we see anybody doing progress monitoring according to standards rather than just the interim data?
If that occurs, I don't know that it's being tracked per se.
Okay.
I think what happens in those districts is you really have to have professional development for your site level leadership. So that when they go in to monitor or assess a teacher, they have some command of what they're looking for, and you provide that then by way of feedback to the teacher with regards to where they're at relative to those standards that are being taught. So I'm assuming you have a lot of that professional development taking place in your district, it sounds like already.
I wouldn't say be ready for, but that's where we want to be.
It could be a guardrail in year 3, now we're creating an alignment and cultural assessment.
The most important part is to make a commitment to what those assessments are going to be for 1 and 2 and 3, so that it's apples and apples and apples, right? That's important for board members because then they get to, I mean, what was hard for me as a board member was like, sometimes we could get squirrely and we're going, here's the point, and here's us going all over the place, right? And we're thinking about, well, but what about this other thing? And what about that other thing? And really being brought back to center to say, this is the assessment that we're using because we're using this, believing that this is our best guess of what's going to help us make improvement on that SIP test. And it really helped to keep us focused too, so that the questions for the board really are around that strategy on what are we learning as a result of using that assessment. And it doesn't mean that we're forgetting everything else, but board members are not experts in the classroom. They're not experts on all of those things, and what the board needs is just like the best summary of this point. It's kind of like a report card, right? It's like your beginning, middle, and end of year report card of where we think we are and how well we're doing.
So my next question would be, obviously this is community involvement, and what do you have, or maybe some type of the best way, like in our PAC meetings, how we can get this, because parents don't come to board meetings, so that they're still involved in this strategic planning of, okay, we're progress monitoring, testing the merit data, because when we have our patterns for some of the things, do you have something that would tie into that so that we can work with parents, present to the parents in the same aspect? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, so the other part of the framework is, so like the community engagement side of it too, there's a role and responsibility for the board members around that as well, because there's a constituency that voted you in, and you have a responsibility to that. So as you're developing your calendar, for example, of when things are going to happen, you might want to start building in opportunities for when you're going to be in front of the community, like maybe you're going to have a town hall, or maybe we're going to send some communication out. But I will say it's really important that once the board has adopted these and the district's working with them, that it's present in the schools, that they know what the goals are. The district is going to be working towards these goals, and it just sort of becomes that eyepiece for them to also see. And I know this works because I have my stepson and my stepdaughter have children in the district at APS. They know exactly what the goals are. The first time that, and it's not because I was their mom, but this was now, I mean, I've been gone, and they both know what their school is working towards. They both know, yeah, you know, our literacy goal at this little school is just, we've reached a milestone that's been crazy. They can talk about it. So, and that's how they've engaged parents at the local level with the school, so that the schools actually have the goals listed. They know what they are. It's on their webpage. It's constant
I
reminder.
guess what I'm asking is, because on my type one of my questions, parent surveys is going to be going out is, how were you involved in any decision making? I mean, we've tried to have these meetings and they don't come in, so obviously the response is going to be no, but how do we get them involved in this, even if, did you get what I'm saying?
So you want the strategies of how you're going to engage them.
Because this is, we need our parents, I mean, a huge section is family culture. I mean, culture, getting our kids, parents to understand the importance of school, coming in, and, you know, if we're asking for their input, but then they don't show up. So we need them to be, you know, am I making
Well,
sense?
yes,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. You're inviting parents to participate, and they're not showing up. We've worked with districts on that, Weaver District. Kim Mazel and her staff have worked with districts in that. We have some subject matter experts that, let me visit with Kim tomorrow and let her know that would be something you would like to visit with her on. And I think she can provide you with some strategies there to provide.
Well, because I think a lot of these things here are important. You know, we're having attendance meetings and we're trying to stress the importance of the data, what it looks like, how you can help. I mean, this lady even offers her time on Sunday. I can go over data with you, and I'm not even joking. She has, you can sign up with her on Sunday, and she will give you one-on-one support on strategies, data, what you're looking at. How many people have three?
It's hard.
And so it's, you know, we want to make sure, because this is for the community, it's for our students, it's for us, that they are involved.
Are you all in community school? You're not? Okay.
No. Well, but one of the things that this can lend itself to is once adopted and identified, is that we tie it back into our 90-day plans, right? And what those pieces should look like, and where it ties specifically to those adult behaviors. I think we just need to be a little bit more strategic, if you will, and develop based off of usage versus compliance. And, you know, kind of like this, instead of having a slew of things, have a couple that are reasonable and doable.
One of the things that we did on our literacy goal for APS, because it was focused specifically on third graders, at the end, kind of before Christmas, one of our board meetings, we dedicated it to students from our lowest performing schools. We picked 2 or 3 readers from those lowest performing schools that actually showed growth. And they came to present to the board in terms of how well they were doing, and they read to us. And we did that just right before the board meeting. It was packed with parents, because parents love to see their kids. And so, and for you as board, that is definitely a demonstration of like how our students, what's the outcome of this work. And I still can remember this one little boy, he was so cute. He said, he goes, you know, just last year I couldn't read. And this year I can read. And he read to us. And he was so proud of himself. And his parents were beaming. So that's another way when you think of like parent engagement, they want to feel really proud of your kids and they want to know that you're acknowledging that we're acknowledging this engagement because we're seeing growth and this is worth it. But what APS has done as a tradition is on that December meeting before the holiday break, they take time to actually have students present to them on one of the goals.
And I don't want to overstay our welcome. But we're here to help and assist. We're a phone call away. If you need our assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, I want to thank you for all the time you spent coming down to help us get this going, because we all can say with certainty that it's all of our attention to do better and to increase our capacity as board members and superintendent, and these are just steps and tools that we get to use to help better our district. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is to adjourn. I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
I move to adjourn the special meeting.
I have a motion by Dr. Player to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Reserve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Meeting adjourned is 4:50.
Can't we just maybe reorganize the way that we ask that question? Can't you maybe reorganize the way you ask that question? Like, maybe say, have you been informed of the strategic plan of the district? And, do you have any questions?
And I've done multiple surveys, I've done matched individual school side, and this is just kind of an overall one that we serve. So I've done multiple surveys and then I condensed it into kind of a one simple form. So, but yes, I agree. But that is just kind of one of the questions that's involved in the one engagement. Are you part of policy changes, things like that?
Or have you been informed of policy changes, stuff like that?
That's actually a good idea. I hope we have the survey out yet, but we can tweak it.
Get you being able to
It's
be,
downstairs still.
Okay.
like
I
we
forgot my password.
format the questions of, we need one more of these. We need one more of those.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Reserve, that's a great
I
idea.
thought you changed it and I can remember it.
You want to do it? It's offered. So I was
Is it because they didn't title on there? You were saying it differently. So you saying literacy, but there's no place to call literacy She had a hard time.
I haven't.
for.
Oh, okay.
Brock, can you tell us to leave, please?
Okay, thank you